Right, good morning everybody from Slimbridge, our WWT Wetland Centre here in the UK, and welcome to the second set of WLI webinars. We've got some great materials lined up for you today from members from all across the world, and we hope that you will enjoy listening to some of the experiences and plans and activities that people are carrying out from across the WLI network. My name is Chris Rostron, and I've been working here at WWT for around 14 years. I'm the International Engagement Manager here, and I work alongside Conor Walsh.
Literally alongside, yeah, I'm the International Engagement Officer. So I'm going to be sitting here in my mask doing the technical side today. And if you have any questions, chuck in the chat, and I'll pass them on to Chris.
Excellent, great. And Conor has done a lot of work already working with partners to get their presentations ready and in the right format and translated. So thank you, Conor, for all of your preparation work on that. The whole session is due to last about an hour, we think. We've got 5 sessions lined up for you. So if we can have a quick look at the agenda and just check what we're going to be listening to today. We're kicking off with a conversation. So this is a chat between Anna Wilson, who has recently actually left WWT, but was our former principal consultant here and had a huge amount of experience working on the design of wetland centres and putting together interpretation and all that kind of stuff. And she's been talking to Gordon Lescinsky, who works for the Hobsons Bay Wetland Centre. This is a wetland centre that doesn't exist yet, so they're going to be discussing a lot of the thought and planning that's gone into that. After that, we'll be moving closer to home for us, at least, to WWT, where Charlotte Levene will talk about Generation Wild, which is one of our new projects aiming to work with schools and young people. After that, we'll move to Spain to look at the Salinas de San Pedro del Pinatar Regional Park and hear a bit about their engagement work there. Moving on then to Morocco with Abdelhak, Fahmi, who we've worked with for a few years now, and he'll show us his wetland centre and the work he's been doing with schools there. And finally, I will be talking a little bit about the Ramsar Convention and the forthcoming Conference of the Parties that's happening in November, and how that's relevant to the work that we're all doing, I guess, in terms of delivering CEPA, so that's communication, education, participation and awareness, at all of our wetland centres. So hopefully that is an interesting lineup and should keep us busy for the next hour. We do have presentations in different languages, but be pleased to hear that we have subtitled them for English versions so that we can all enjoy those. If you'd like a transcript of them, we'll put a link in the chat box and you can download that, or you can look at it on the WLI website later. We have started recording the session. We know that many people, because of time zones or pressures of work, won't be able to make this session live, but it will be available for people to watch after the webinar. So if you do want to share it, we will be using that afterwards. And finally, we will have a question and answer session at the end. So if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat box at any point. Conor will be keeping an eye on that. But at the end, there is some time if you would like to have a quick chat with us about any of the things that have come up during the session. So let's kick off. As I said, we're going to listen to 2 wetland designers discussing their art, as it were. So Anna Wilson recently called up Gordon Lescinsky and discussed their plans for the Hobsons Bay Wetland Centre. So this, at the moment, it is an existing wetland. It's somewhere where local people and visitors don't readily access it. So this is a really nice opportunity to look at how you design a wetland centre from scratch and really start thinking about how you can help people access it, whether that's local people or people visiting from further afield. So Anna started by asking Gordon to introduce himself, and he will kick that off with introduction. So
I'm a long-time nature lover, and I'm also a long-time resident of the western suburbs of Melbourne. And I'm the team leader for centre development for our community group, which we call the Hobsons Bay Wetland Centre. And so we do lots of things. I lead nature walks in the wetlands and teach people how to identify salt marsh plants, but I'm also working on our main mission, our main vision, which is to build a wetland center building. So we're in the west of Melbourne, as I said, and Melbourne is situated on a large bay called Port Phillip Bay. And in the west, there's an area of hundreds of hectares of undeveloped coastline and creeks and grasslands and wetlands, which now lie within the urban footprint of Melbourne. But it is part of one of Australia's Ramsar listed wetlands, and listed for several reasons, but it's because, largely because it's host to a number of species of water birds and particularly migratory shorebirds. So we're at the southern end of the East Asian Australasian flyway. So
Right.
about as far south as migratory birds can fly, almost.
Mhm.
And the Hobsons Bay Wetland Centre teaches people to appreciate nature and to appreciate this area in a nutshell.
Sounds fantastic. So I think you're probably in a similar position to quite a lot of WLI members, and we get quite a lot of inquiries at WWT, particularly through our consultancy. So people who want to either develop new wetland centres or new facilities for their visitors. So it's really great to have you here talking about your experience, because this is a process you've started and you're very much underway with. So I mean, it'd be great to start by saying sort of what's the vision for the Wetland Centre when this project is finished.
Okay, well, so we've got a mission statement, which is to connect people with nature. So that's what it's all about. And then we have a vision of doing it by building a wetland center, because, and this would be in common with other Wetlands Link members. It's would be to help the community visit the wetlands, experience them more deeply, learn about them, get involved to help protect them. And that's the reason why Ramsar Convention and Wetlands Link International believe in building wetland centers. So we've just bought into that vision. We really do believe that is the way to connect people with nature and get those outcomes.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be really great for your communities there, and that was going to be one of my next questions, was just sort of who are the intended audiences for the centre, who are you doing it for and hoping that will come and use the new facilities?
Okay, well, look, for the benefit of this audience, I'd just point out that it's for any visitor from anywhere in the world, from any culture, and it's even for people who follow us in other countries who will never get a chance to visit, because that's one of the interesting things about wetland centers. We have other partner wetland centers on the flyway, but really in the main, it is for the local community. Mm-hmm. So it's a big urban area, and it's for the people of the western suburbs. First of all, because they're the ones who will have ample opportunity to visit it, and then looking at the whole community, there's a special attention for people who don't often get a chance to be in nature or go, trek in nature, like people with limited mobility, and young children, like, really young children and their families, but also students of all ages. But just basically anybody in the community. It's like a community center in its nature.
Fantastic. And sort of just following on from that, does the community have much engagement or opportunities to engage with the wetlands as they are at the moment, or will this be sort of quite new, I guess, for them?
Well, that's a really good question. So the open space is there, but it's not, I wouldn't say that it's activated, and I wouldn't say people appreciate it. We've got basically a world-class conservation area and a national park that is adjacent to suburbs, where the people who are buying homes in those suburbs don't even really realize what they're next to. And the area is accessible, but there aren't necessarily the facilities. And when you learn about what the community really looks for when they go out, there's a lot of things that people want to make them feel comfortable exploring an area. They want certain kinds of paths and amenities, and they would love to know that there's actually somebody on duty at the Wetland Center, and all these things will make a difference to a certain type of visitor. And then when it comes to like people who can't really travel very far, like really elderly people or people who have to travel in wheelchairs, they have really limited ability to get into these areas in the West, and generally anywhere you go, that would be the case. So this is our big open space. For the West, it's our largest open space. It's actually one of the largest open spaces in Melbourne.
Mm. I know that's it's a really good way of putting it, that the sort of the wetlands are there, but they're not yet activated for their audiences. I really like that. That's great. So just a little bit more background to the project. Sort of where did it start, and how far along in your planning have you got?
Well, it's the brainchild of Dr. Marilyn Olive, who's an environmental scientist, who's always been really passionate about the concept of connecting people with nature, hence our mission statement. So Marilyn started this project several years ago and built support for it in the local community and attracted a keen group of people. So we got to the point where we incorporated. And also the group has been very successful at finding partner organizations who share the vision or who will take an interest in the Wetland Center. And I think we've come a long way, and there's still a long way to go. The turning point has been, I think, when we approached a local council to lend its support. So now we have a really strong partnership with council. And thanks to them, we've been able to enter some of the steps which are really difficult for some organizations. Your feasibility study, that's behind us. Some of the other, studies that you have to do, and we now have a concept design. So the building has been designed by architects, not to the point where it could actually, we call it shovel ready in Australia, where we could take funds tomorrow and put out contracts. We're not to that point, but we're at the point where you can show people a really brilliant design and they can see what it looks like, and we can take it to funding bodies and say, look, it's been really well thought out. This is what it's going to be like.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a really big milestone to get to, isn't it? That's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. It feels great, but on the other hand, it feels scary.
Yeah, I bet. So, so tell us a little bit more about the sort of the concept for the new centre. Then, what sort of things will it include for the different visitors that it will have?
Okay. Well, it is the core of it is it's like a community space. So there is actually very generic space, rooms that are large enough to be used for lots of different purposes. Like they will spend time as classrooms for class trips. They may spend time as just lounges for senior citizen centers to come and visit. And then it's got lots of satellite features so that it can accommodate a lot of uses, and you can also use it as a base from which to explore. So there will be a cafe, and it will actually be like a bike cafe because it's we're on a very popular bike trail. Okay. There will be nature play, which is playgrounds that kind of connect the children to nature instead of just climbing on big plastic things. There will be features about the center, and a lot of this is still needs to be designed and needs to be worked out with the community, but we want it to be an indigenous landscape so that there are things around that help you understand what the landscape was like before the arrival of Europeans, and to understand things about the landscape that would have been really significant to the traditional owners. When we talk about all abilities, the landscape architect has designed a concept of a trail network, but you could actually go on the trails and take a really short walk. Like you could maybe just walk a few meters and that's your walk, but then there'll be longer walks and all these different distances and trails that are not paved. Like they won't be normal pavement, but they will still be accessible for wheelchairs.
Right.
And little things like what we call yarning circles, which is an indigenous cultural concept, but it's just a little place where you can stop in the landscape and just sit down and talk, and wildlife viewing, and then as part of it, there's actually a facility, an educational facility. So there'll be laboratories. So there's classroom space, but then these will actually be laboratories where you could actually do university level research, and they'll be accessible to the community, but they'll actually be there for our university partners to use whenever they need to for whatever projects they want, so that we can have really important research happening in the nearby wetlands, because that's an important part of what's an important part of our business model, number one, and it's actually an important way of contributing to the long-term flourishing of those wetlands.
That sounds great. So I mean, it's interesting that it's on the site of what had been a rubbish tip as well. So you're actually, are you creating new habitat as part of that, or are you just creating sort of I guess recreational space that would link to and send people in the direction of the existing wetlands?
Well, yeah, it's hard to describe it in detail, but I'll just try to sort of conceptually, we are suburban but not urban, and it getting more developed all the time. And then the coast is actually important conservation land, and then it's kind of layered. So it's like a transition zone, and so what we will be doing is developing an area that is basically brownfields, but we will be near to conservation areas, and then there's other zones in between. So like I said, it's layered, and the trick is to work with those layers so that you're directing recreation into zones where the land managers are managing for recreation. And so the organizations managing the land are the local council and the state government. And then right where we build the center, instead of just having it sitting in the middle of an old paddock, we have a vision of creating a wetlands right at the doorstep. And this would be not a huge billabong or a big lake, but just what we call an ephemeral wetlands, because what you would have had in the area 200 years ago is you would have had coastal salt marsh along the shore of the bay, and then inland you would have had ephemeral wetlands. So that is something which is actually, it can be created with stormwater harvesting, but and it shouldn't be, it'll be quite challenging, but not it won't be impossible technically, and it'll be a little bit novel, because we do have created wetlands in the Melbourne area, but nobody's actually tried to create one that's very evocative of what an original ephemeral wetland would have been like. So that would be just an area that's, a habitat for frogs and dragonflies and native vegetation, and just kind of flooded in the winter and starting to dry out in the warmer weather. Something like that, and that would be our showcase. And then all the new paths that I was talking about will be paths in that wetlands area.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds really brilliant. It's such a great project, and so thank you so much for telling us about it. We're probably running out of time a little bit now, but just to finish, sort of what's next for Hobsons Bay? What are your next steps in your project?
Okay, well, hopefully hopefully soon we can announce, have a really good announcement like the first round of funding has materialized. No matter what the time frame is, we are in it for the long haul. And we're an organization that is doing things all the time anyway. So we are doing walks and workshops and citizen science and conservation projects, and they keep going. And we just have to pace ourselves because there's a lot of learning to be done. So all of those of us who are active in the organization, we're just learning all the time. And we're getting to the point where we need to learn more about government policy and fundraising and stormwater harvesting and green prescriptions and blue carbon. And so we will just grow probably organically and try to turn over that big milestone of being able to some cornerstone funding. Fantastic.
So where is your funding coming from for the Wetland Centre so far?
Okay, so it will come from a variety of sources. So it'll be like multiple layers of government and probably some corporate and philanthropic. So it's a project which is aligned with a number of things that government is interested in, because it's a conservation project, but it's also a community health project, very much. And so there are a number of different of avenues that we're basically kind of pursuing all at once.
Fantastic. Well, I could ask so many more questions about it, but we probably should leave it there. But if people want to find more or follow your story or see how things develop over the next year or so, where can people find out more about you? Okay.
So if you're searching for us, search for Hobsons Bay Wetland Centre, and you will find us on Instagram and Facebook, and then our website's hobsonsbaywetlandcentre.org.au.
Fantastic. Well, it's been really, really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving up your time for this webinar and for this little chat.
Well, thank you.
And wish you the best of luck. I really look forward to seeing it develop and hopefully open to its visitors in the not too distant future. So thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great to hear a project in progress. And many of the things that Gordon was talking about are things that many wetland centres have been through. And when you're thinking about planning a wetland centre, that idea of zoning things so that you're managing, where you've got your busy areas with lots of people to the other areas which are much more sensitive to wildlife is really important. And the whole aspect of community consultation. I think that idea of the Wetland Centre as a community hub is a really excellent one, really activating the wetland, as Gordon would say, in a way that both benefits local people, but also benefits the wildlife as well in terms of attracting kind of better management and recognition and money. And lots of issues there around current things that people are thinking about for climate change, for example. So looking at ephemeral wetlands so that you're kind of reflecting the weather events, using stormwater so that you can collect water during extreme weather events. And also he was talking about the salt marsh, which is obviously a key thing when you're thinking about blue carbon. So a whole load of things going on there. I wish them the best of luck, really, and hope that their hard work is paying off. Luckily, as Gordon says, he's a very patient person. So I think that these ideas, once they're there, once you've got a group of people who are enthusiastic, surely that is going to attract funding, that's going to attract attention, and I think that's going to be an amazing wetland centre when it comes into being. So we're going to move to WWT now. This is a project that was produced largely to kind of try and engage a sector or a section of young people and children that sometimes we don't attract to our wetland centres. So people from more deprived backgrounds and areas, and it's using a real mix of kind of high-tech and low-tech tools, both at the wetland centres and at the schools. So this is something that we've learned, is that if you're managing to engage the school before the kids come to the wetland centres and then also provide them with materials and activities after the visit, this really kind of cements things in young people's minds, really helps them to understand and get the best out of their visit to the wetland centre. So this is going to be really interesting, and the central character of Ava is definitely something that's come out of someone's very creative and imaginative mind. And Charlotte Levene, who is the project manager, will talk a little bit more about that.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I work for the WWT, and I'm going to tell you a project about nature connection for primary school children, and the project's called Generation Wild. Generation Wild is our schools project that runs across 7 of the WWT sites in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and it's specifically aimed at our schools in economically disadvantaged areas. It offers a free school visit for 5 to 11-year-olds, including school transport, a free family visit, school and family access to a website that has lots of different nature connection activities all around the year for every season. We have resource packs with activities linking to the project, special certificates and badges for the children, and also a chance to win the construction of a mini wetland in the school grounds. What's specific about this project is it really focuses on nature connectedness rather than just learning opportunities. So it's not just about learning about nature, it's not just learning in nature. What we want this project to do is to help children really experience nature directly, to feel it, to hear it, to smell it as well as see it. And most importantly, they need to feel part of nature rather than separate from it. All of the activities in Generation Wild are designed to connect people with nature through the 5 pathways identified by the University of Derby. So that's senses, emotion, compassion, meaning and beauty. This project is specifically targeting children in poorer areas. The way we work out which schools we can target is through free school meal data. So we know which schools are in economically disadvantaged areas and we can specifically target those schools. These children we know don't have the same opportunities, and what we want this project to do is to remove some of those barriers. Historically, we know that children from economically disadvantaged backgrounds have less opportunities to connect with nature. They also may feel that nature isn't for them. They worry that they won't fit in, and they don't have all the right equipment and clothing, and that they don't know the names of the animals and they don't know the rules. We believe that nature should be for everyone, and this project absolutely aims to break down those barriers. Generation Wild works with schools and families in disadvantaged communities and provides opportunities to connect with nature through an arts-based programme. So this programme and this project focus all on Ava. And Ava is part bird, part osprey, and we can see her here in the corner. It's a really different project. It connects with nature through storytelling. So we work with children through puppetry and nature activities and also with some online engagement. So here's Ava. Ava's destiny is to reconnect humans with the natural world. Ava the osprey wakes up one morning to find that she's in a giant nest and she has transformed and she's no longer just an osprey, she's part girl, part osprey. And her story is introduced to the children through a digital storybook at school. At the end of that story, they're left wondering what has happened to Ava, and when they come to the wetlands site, this is what they find out. They arrive and they stumble across Ava in a giant nest. And throughout the project, they discover that Ava's destiny is to connect children and humans with the rest of the animal world. Once they found Ava, they watch a puppet show and they learn that they need to discover why she's here and what's happened to her. The way they do this is going all the way around the wetland site. They have these little baskets that you can see the girls have here, and they put them on our posts where they find out more information. The post tells them all about different nature activities they can do, and they do a nature activity at each one of the posts. Once they've done this, the idea is that they've demonstrated they're committed to nature, and then they listen to something from the little basket, which tells them a secret about Ava. Once they go back to school, they have access to our website, and the website has 2 key tasks. It tracks Ava's migratory journey to West Africa. She has 10 stop-off points, and each one there's some audio and written bulletins that tell you more about her. On the very last stop, there's an animation where she's reunited with her family, and she meets the guardians of the world who explain her destiny. The children will initially listen to these updates with their teacher at school, and then they can go home and listen to them again. As well as listening to the updates and learning about what's happening on Ava's journey, they're encouraged to complete nature activities at school and at home to further their connection with nature. On the website, there are 54 different nature activities that they can do. None of those activities require you to have any equipment. You don't need to have a big garden. You don't need to have access to a very large outside space. The idea is you could do them anywhere at all outside, where there's a tiny little bit of grass or somewhere where you can listen to things, do things, build things. The children receive a virtual badge every time an activity is completed. And if they complete 10 nature activities, they become guardians of the wild, and at school they receive a certificate and a pin badge. So how's the project going? First of all, what's going well? Schools are really enthusiastic. They're really keen to sign up. Some of our sites are really, really busy at the moment, which is fantastic. Others are also getting there. So we have got schools coming to every site wanting to take part of this project, and they're booking all the way through now to next term. The children are really engaged when they're on site. They're mesmerised by Ava, and it's really interesting that we've got 5-year-olds keen to get involved and also 11-year-olds keen to get involved. They enjoy the activities. They're using the website, so we can see that they're logging onto the website and they're doing the nature activities. Feedback is absolutely excellent. The learning managers, who are the team who deliver the project on each one of our sites, their feedback is absolutely brilliant, and it's reaching the right schools. So what are some of the challenges? Firstly is the family engagement. We don't have direct access to the families. The schools promote the project to the families through their networks, so we don't have a lot of control over that. It's great when our families are coming and we can give them a free ticket so they get to bring their entire family to come and visit. However, we can't encourage that to happen. That has to be via the schools. We're really mindful that we pay for transport for schools to come on site, but we're not able to pay for families to come on site at the moment for their transport, so that's also a barrier. The project spans a wide age group, and although it's working at the moment and the puppet show seems to engage both 5-year-olds all the way through to 11-year-olds, we are mindful that some of the language is sometimes more tricky for the smallest of children, and some of the ideas might be more difficult for the kind of 11-year-olds, the older children, to really believe in. We're also really aware of the competing pressures on schools, and whilst we know that to set this project up and to get it working really well doesn't take a lot of work for schools. The teachers have got so many different things that they have to do, so many competing pressures. We're really mindful that we're adding something else, and we don't want to make things difficult for them. So we're really constantly thinking about how can we make this process as simple as possible so schools and children get lots out of it, but it's not hugely onerous on them. Finally, it is a new way of working and it is a new way of thinking. We are really aware that this is different. This isn't about learning about nature. What this is about learning how to be in nature, to really connect with nature. And so we want people to be really passionate about that, but it's new and it's different. So what have teachers said? I thought it was quite useful to give you some feedback. So a bit of feedback from all the, we give out forms at the end to ask people how they feel about it, and we get them to write to us a few weeks later as well. So some quotes from teachers. Lovely day out of the classroom, using nature to learn. Pupils enjoyed the activities, and the website has good activities to use back in school. A day to spark curiosity in nature, which is really nice, providing great opportunities for open-ended learning, exciting and educational. This one I particularly like because it was a great trip and we appreciate the cost being covered as we'd not be able to visit otherwise. Fantastic day, an absolute must. And that kind of comment around we wouldn't be able to do it otherwise is, I guess, gets to the crux of this project. This is why we're doing it. We want to make sure that those children who wouldn't have access are able to have access and that finance isn't that barrier. It's also the reason why this project really excites me. It's why I came to the project, because I want to think about how we meet the needs of those children. So the Generation World programme and overview. So this is what the project's about. The main project stages are the project setup. So the teacher sets up their class on the website. Then the story. So the teacher reads Ava's digital storybook to the class and everybody learns about Ava. The school comes to the WWT. They watch the puppet performance and they complete the trail, unlocking Ava's secrets. Following on from that, there's the family activity. The schools go back. They tell the children to share their tickets with the families so the families can come back for free, and the children watch the website both at school and back at home. They track Ava on her journey and complete her story. So the nature activities they can do at school, they can do with their families. And finally, the Guardians of the Wild. Schools award children with their pin badge and certificates once they've collected 10 virtual badges. Do you want to know more about the project? you can email me, this is my email address, or go onto our website and you'll be able to see bits about the project. Thank you.
Great. That was Charlotte talking about a really exciting project, and I love all the different elements of this project. You know, the mix between kind of virtual and practical hands-on stuff is really good. The preparation of the kids before they get to the site is great, and then that real wow of having, you know, an amazing half human, half bird creature that meets them when they arrive there. And I think it's also been, you know, a really exciting thing for our learning managers who work on site. They've had to learn new skills, they've had to become puppeteers, and they've had to be able to kind of take on this whole new narrative and whole story about ospreys and challenges, I guess, that many of our wild birds face in a way that's very engaging and encourages the children to be excited and learn from it. I think, as Charlotte said, you know, some of the barriers to children coming to some of our centres have been removed, and this does target a specific group of young people and children. So that's, you know, an excellent way of reaching an audience that we maybe wouldn't reach otherwise. And continuing that project once they get back to school, you know, becoming guardians of the wild, I just think is a really nice and kind of like intuitive thing that kids like to do. They like to win prizes, they like to get badges, and to do that on a wildlife theme is really excellent. So thank you, Charlotte, for sharing that one with us. We're heading to Spain now, to the salt pans of Spain. So we're going to hear from María Ciller from San Pedro del Pinatar about the engagement activities that they're delivering.
Hola, mi nombre es María y soy la coordinadora del centro de visitantes que está ubicado en el Parque Regional de las Salinas y Arenales de San Pedro del Pinatar. Lo primero que quería era agradecer a Wetland International por habernos invitado a participar en este webinario. Yo os voy a hablar de forma muy resumida de cómo es el Parque Regional de las Salinas de San Pedro y del programa de educación ambiental que llevamos a cabo desde el Servicio de Información. Aquí comenzamos. Esta es una imagen del Parque Regional de las Salinas de San Pedro. Estamos ubicados aquí. La ubicación donde estamos es en España, en esta zona de aquí naranja, que es la región de Murcia, y concretamente en la zona litoral, en la costa. Para resumir mucho cómo es este parque regional, podríamos decir que es una fábrica de sal en la naturaleza, porque todo lo que veis aquí en la imagen, todos estos cuadraditos, son charcas salineras que están ubicadas, estas salinas, entre el mar Mediterráneo y el mar Menor. El procedimiento es coger el agua del mar Menor, que tiene mayor salinidad que la del mar Mediterráneo, y hacerla pasar por distintas charcas hasta que el agua se evapora y cristaliza la sal. Este sería el motor que mueve todo lo que vemos en el parque. ¿Cómo es el parque? Es gracias a que está esta explotación salinera. Aquí, claro, tenemos unas condiciones idóneas para que esto se dé. Las temperaturas son muy altas, sobre todo en verano, y hay muy poquitas precipitaciones. Esto, que es ideal para obtener sal, es muy difícil para el desarrollo de la vida, lo que hace que las especies que viven aquí estén adaptadas a esas condiciones de mucho calor, muy pocas precipitaciones y mucha salinidad en el entorno. Son especies adaptadas a esta situación. Aquí podemos ver los distintos ecosistemas. El parque regional tiene una extensión de 856 hectáreas. Eso, para que os hagáis una idea, son unos 7 kilómetros de costa. Y en ese pequeño espacio tenemos estos 7 ecosistemas que veis aquí con distintos colores, cada uno con su tipo de vegetación y de fauna. Eso hace que en un espacio muy pequeño haya una gran biodiversidad. Tenemos 227 especies de flora y 167 especies de fauna, de las que 130 corresponden a las aves. Esta gran biodiversidad, unido al valor de los elementos culturales, ha hecho que tenga distintas figuras de protección, tanto a nivel regional como a nivel europeo e incluso internacional. El grupo de las aves, que es el más destacado y en el que me quería parar un poco, es lo principal que vemos en el parque cuando estamos paseando, la gran abundancia de aves que podemos ver en la zona. Y esto se debe principalmente a 3 factores. Por un lado, se encuentran muchísimo alimento. Las charcas salineras tienen agua todo el año y en el agua están los invertebrados acuáticos adaptados a vivir en esas condiciones de salinidad que son la base de la alimentación de las aves, con lo cual encuentran mucho alimento. También hay un pez, el único vertebrado que puede vivir en esta salinidad, que es el fartén, y que también supone la alimentación para un gran número de aves, en este caso las que son pescadoras. Eso hace que este lugar haya muchas aves por el alimento, pero es que también encuentran lugares tranquilos donde poder nidificar, porque la explotación salinera tiene muchas áreas a las que nosotros no podemos acceder por tratarse de la explotación salinera. Esas divisiones que hay entre charcas son filas de tierra, de piedra y arena, son los lugares donde ellas encuentran tranquilidad para nidificar. Esto hace que cada primavera más de 1.500 parejas de aves elijan este lugar para poder nidificar. Parejas de aves que pertenecen hasta a 20 especies diferentes. Eso es otro punto clave para que elijan las Salinas de San Pedro como un lugar para que pueda haber tantas aves. Y luego también otra situación que se da, que favorece que haya esa gran diversidad mitológica, es la situación que tenemos entre el continente europeo y el continente africano, ya que estamos en un lugar de paso de las migraciones que realizan las aves. Aquí, por ejemplo, como podemos ver en la imagen, el zampullín es un ave que viene a pasar el invierno, es un ave invernante. Sin embargo, el charroncito viene desde África en primavera para nidificar en estas salinas y luego, después del verano, volver hacia la zona de África. Como no me puedo extender mucho para hablar del parque, para que me dé tiempo a contaros también el programa de educación ambiental, os he puesto aquí la web donde podéis encontrar más información del parque regional, donde hay folletos, donde hay guías, también el acceso a las redes sociales y un vídeo del parque de 20 minutos que explica muy bien la biodiversidad de este entorno. Este es el centro de visitantes donde trabajamos, que está en la entrada del parque regional. Y este es el equipo de información que trabajamos en este centro de visitantes. Somos un equipo multidisciplinar y con mucha ilusión, la verdad, por transmitir los valores del Parque Regional de las Salinas de San Pedro. En el centro de visitantes, las personas que vienen a visitarnos pueden encontrar estos recursos. Por un lado tienen material divulgativo, como son las guías, los mapas, también un servicio de préstamos de prismáticos, y podemos resolver todas las dudas en relación a su visita al parque regional. También tenemos una sala de exposición con distintos materiales, como pantallas, paneles, e información que les ayuda a conocer mejor el parque. Y una sala de proyección donde ponemos el vídeo que habéis visto antes, que está disponible en la web. Ahora os voy a pasar a hablar de lo que es ya el programa de educación ambiental que desarrollamos desde el servicio de información. Este programa lo hacemos de forma conjunta con otros centros de visitantes con los que trabajamos en red, con otros espacios naturales protegidos de la región de Murcia. Son 5 líneas que voy a pasar a explicaros ahora de forma separada, o sea, voy a ir hablando de cada una de ellas, pero comentaros que a lo largo de estas líneas de acción, de estas 5 líneas, en 2021 han participado más de 2.500 personas. En los momentos anteriores al COVID este número era superior, ya que ahora tenemos que hacer los grupos más reducidos de participantes y eso ha hecho que se reduzca un poco el número. Pero aún así, durante el año 2021 han sido 2.500 personas las que han participado en estos programas. Por un lado tenemos el programa de La naturaleza a tu alcance, que está dirigido a grupos organizados. Sobre todo participan centros educativos y también asociaciones y otras entidades sin ánimo de lucro. En el caso de las Salinas de San Pedro tenemos 7 actividades diferentes, que se pueden ver ahí en la imagen, y la mayoría son rutas guiadas por el parque regional, aunque también tenemos alguna, como puede ser una charla online, para los momentos en los que no se pueden desplazar hasta el parque. Este programa está disponible todo el año y es necesario reservar previamente la fecha para que podamos organizar la agenda. También tenemos otro programa, que es la mochila de actividades, y esta está más dirigida a realizar actividades en fin de semana y ya no es para grupos organizados. Pueden participar de forma particular cualquier persona o familias. Y el tipo de actividades que ofertamos son rutas guiadas, talleres, exposiciones y también cuentacuentos. Y esta programación sí cambia cada trimestre. Entonces, cada trimestre se edita una nueva mochila con nuevas actividades. Y en la mayoría de actividades es necesario inscribirse. La inscripción la hacemos de forma online para que sea más cómoda. Otra parte de nuestro programa de educación ambiental es la celebración de días mundiales de temática ambiental. Cada vez que se celebra un día mundial, editamos un dossier, como la imagen que veis en la pantalla, y ahí englobamos todas las actividades que realizamos, tanto con público general como con escolares, y el dossier abarca las actividades de los distintos espacios naturales protegidos que celebran ese día mundial. Nosotros en las Salinas de San Pedro, los días mundiales principales que celebramos son el de los humedales en febrero, el de las aves migratorias en mayo, el del medio ambiente en junio y el Día de las Aves en octubre. También otra línea de nuestro programa de educación ambiental son las campañas de sensibilización ambiental. Durante todo el año vamos desarrollando diferentes campañas, tanto con actividades donde pueden participar las personas como con publicaciones a través de las redes sociales. En este caso estamos desarrollando 3 campañas. Una es la campaña 0% plástico en espacios naturales, que está centrada en transmitir la problemática de la presencia de plástico en la naturaleza. Otra es la de plantas exóticas invasoras, que se centra en sensibilizar sobre el problema que supone introducir especies exóticas invasoras. Y la otra campaña que estamos desarrollando es la de Cuidaico no circulas solo, enfocado a sensibilizar sobre la importancia de circular a una velocidad adecuada en los espacios naturales para evitar atropellos de fauna. Además de estas 3 campañas, en verano tenemos 2 más que se realizan durante la época estival. Una es la campaña Territorio Tortuga, para informar de cómo actuar si las personas ven tortugas o sus huellas en la playa, y otra sobre Posidonia oceanica, para concienciar de la importancia de conservar esta planta marina y sobre todo conservar sus restos en la playa. Por último, la última línea de acción de nuestro programa de educación ambiental son los vídeos Mi Clase Natural. Estos vídeos surgieron en el momento de la pandemia, del COVID, porque los grupos no podían desplazarse hasta el parque regional y vimos que una buena forma era grabar vídeos cortitos donde nosotros le contábamos los aspectos que desarrollaríamos durante una visita guiada, pues contárselos a través de vídeos. Estos vídeos están disponibles en el canal de YouTube de Espacios Naturales Protegidos de la región de Murcia y sobre todo están destinados a centros educativos, asociaciones y entidades que estén interesadas en difundir los valores naturales y culturales de los espacios naturales protegidos. Hasta ahora hemos grabado 3 vídeos, uno sobre cómo se fabrica sal en un espacio natural, otro sobre la vida acuática en las salinas y otro de la avifauna del parque regional. Seguiremos haciendo grabaciones y conforme grabemos nuevos vídeos los subiremos al canal de YouTube. Y bueno, esto es lo que quería contaros en este ratito. Espero que os sea de utilidad la información y bueno, animaros a todos que vengáis a visitarnos, que seguro que en persona os gusta más el parque. Muchas gracias.
And thank you, Maria. A really nice little whistle-stop tour around the wetlands. As she said, you know, this has developed from being industrial area, more or less, where they were producing salt, an extremely inhospitable habitat. So really interesting to see, you know, some of the adaptations of the birds, particularly that live there, but also the plants and other animals will have a similar thing. It always amazes me to see flamingos, because they are such strange looking creatures, but obviously adapted for a very specific environment. Also really interesting to hear about the impacts of the COVID pandemic. As Maria said, you know, they had a big change in the numbers of visitors that were coming, so they had to change their program slightly, making things accessible online, and also producing those school videos, the My Natural Space videos, which are a really nice way of allowing people to still access the site, even when during a global pandemic, you couldn't really go there. And that's when schools, you know, they needed these things to be available to them to enrich the learning environment that they had. So thank you, Maria. We're going to pass on now to Morocco, to Abdelhak Fahmi, who has been one of our active members for a while now. He has a relatively small wetland centre, but they do a lot of work with schools and young people, and so we will pass over to him.
plusieurs projets ont été réalisés pour la préservation et la sauvegarde de la lagune de l'Oualidia dans le cadre d'une convention signée par différents départements du royaume, sous le patronage du roi du Maroc en avril 2010. Parmi ces projets, l'aménagement du centre d'information écologique. Ce centre a été aménagé en collaboration entre la mairie qui a donné le lot du terrain et le département des eaux et des forêts et de la lutte contre la désertification qui a aménagé et équipé le centre. La gestion de ce centre est assurée par notre association Grepom BirdLife Maroc, qui est le groupe de recherche pour la protection des oiseaux au Maroc. Les activités du centre. Ces activités se répartissent en deux niveaux, à l'intérieur et à l'extérieur du centre. À l'intérieur du centre, premièrement, les visites libres. Les groupes scolaires ainsi que les visiteurs du centre effectuent une visite libre pour voir l'exposition des oiseaux du Maroc et les affiches des valeurs écologiques et des valeurs socio-économiques de la lagune de l'Oualidia. Deuxièmement, présentation audio et audiovisuelle. Après la visite libre, les visiteurs et les groupes scolaires assistent à 3 présentations audio et audiovisuelles. La première présentation concerne le complexe lagunaire Sidi Moussa-Oualidia en général et la lagune de l'Oualidia en particulier. Cette présentation s'articule sur tout d'abord, l'inscription du complexe lagunaire Sidi Moussa-Oualidia sur la liste de Ramsar comme zone humide d'importance internationale et sur les valeurs écologiques de la lagune, flore, faune, en particulier l'avifaune. Et aussi sur les activités socio-économiques dans la lagune de l'Oualidia, l'ostréiculture par exemple, la pêche lagunaire, le ramassage des coquillages, le ramassage des algues, l'agriculture sur les flancs de la lagune et enfin le tourisme. La deuxième présentation concerne la migration des oiseaux, alors que la troisième présentation concerne le bec des oiseaux et leur régime alimentaire. Toujours à l'intérieur du centre, on organise des ateliers pédagogiques de jeux et dessins écologiques pour les enfants. À l'extérieur du centre, on effectue des visites guidées des zones humides de l'Oualidia, à savoir le marécage et la lagune, pour observer les différentes composantes écologiques de ces deux écosystèmes et identifier les valeurs patrimoniales naturelles et sociales ainsi que les menaces sur ces zones humides. La sensibilisation dans les écoles et l'organisation des ateliers pédagogiques est parmi les activités importantes à l'extérieur du centre, surtout pour les écoliers des établissements scolaires mitoyens de la lagune, car ces écoliers fréquentent quotidiennement la lagune. Parmi ces ateliers, celui organisé dans le cadre du programme Spring Live en novembre 2021, dont le thème a été consacré à la préservation des nids des oiseaux. Ce projet de fabrication des nids réalisé par le centre avec les écoliers des établissements scolaires avoisinantes de la lagune était classé meilleur projet en Afrique en 2021.
Great to see that from Abdelhak, from what is a relatively small centre, but delivering huge diversity of activities for local schools and local children. And I particularly like that kind of range of things that they do, from looking at kind of the financial benefits of wetlands to their place as part of the flyway, to particular adaptations and the nest building activities that they did with the kids. I think young people and children are always very excited when the teacher stops talking and they actually get to do something hands-on and make things. So it's a nice range of things that they get to do, including looking at wildlife and using binoculars and things. So thank you to Abdelhak for that and taking the time to do it. It's always good to have committed individuals who are willing to step away from their busy schedules and prepare something for us, which is the case for everybody who's done stuff for us today. We're going to move on now to looking at the Ramsar Convention. So we are going to have a short PowerPoint presentation where I will talk a little bit about how wetland centres feature as part of the Ramsar Convention. I think sometimes, the Ramsar Convention seems very lofty and distant from what we all do, but actually wetland centres are one of the key elements really in terms of delivering what the Ramsar Convention seeks to do. So next slide please, Connor. The Ramsar Convention then has 172 contracting parties. So the contracting parties are effectively the government. So that's 172 countries that are signed up to Ramsar and signed up to the objectives of wise use of wetlands, of creation of Ramsar sites, and of working internationally to protect wetlands. You can see from this diagram taken from one of the documents on their website, an idea of how the conference features as part of the Ramsar Convention. It's a cycle of 3 years. So every 3 years, all of those parties are invited to get together to review progress of the Ramsar Convention, to plan for the next period, and to think about upcoming issues that are topical and that are going to become an issue. The key thing, I guess, to understand from this diagram is that there is the international aspect of it, looking at SEPA, which is the Communication, Education, Participation and Awareness, and things like the STRP, which is the Scientific and Technical Review Panel. And those are then reflected at national level. So you will be able to find, if your country is a contracting party, you will be able to find representatives in the government and also with NGOs of people who are representing what the convention is trying to do. There is the SEPA Oversight Panel. So this whole SEPA program that we have at the moment is being reviewed by the SEPA Oversight Panel to become something more focused. And one of the key things in the SEPA program is looking at how wetland centres can deliver these messages about wetlands on site. So in terms of a practical manifestation or a practical application of the treaty, you can really see that through a lot of work that you guys are doing, a lot of work that we're doing at our wetland centres. The next Conference of the Parties, which is why we're talking about it today, will take place in November, likely in China. And this will be a good opportunity for us to start thinking about wetland centres and the SEPA program and start promoting what we're doing at that conference. Next slide, please. So as I say, SEPA, all of this kind of engagement, outreach, education work that we do is a core element of Ramsar. One of the shifts, I guess, in the last few decades has been that we need to, as well as doing the survey work and the science and the specialisms, we also need to be very clear about how we're communicating that to people and encouraging people to take action and to learn about why wetland centres are important. It's fine, I guess, it's great that we have good information on migratory birds or the state of wetlands, but we need to be turning that into something that people will understand. And that, I guess, is where the strength of wetland centres lie. It's in the people who work in wetland centres, how they're structured and how they get those messages across. So World Wetlands Day is one of the key things that Ramsar does every year on the 2nd of February, and that produces a huge range of activities on site using the materials that Ramsar produces to really get information across to people. Next slide, please. So what will we be doing at COP14? So at the Conference of the Parties, we will attend, a small group of us from WWT, but also from across the WLI network, there will be representatives there. We will hold what is called a side event. So this is an event that's additional to the activities and the discussions that are going on. And this will have several elements to it. So partly it will talk about the new SEPA approach, partly it will give good examples of wetland centres and what they're doing, and partly it will deliver the Star Wetland Awards, which is our new programme to recognise good practice and the best of what wetland centres can do. It also allows us to network with lots of other SEPA representatives. So these can be people either from government or NGOs, and really get the SEPA up the agenda at the Conference of the Parties, which will then be reflected in some of the decisions that that conference produces, and those in turn will then be used by the countries to deliver better SEPA on the ground. Next slide, please. So what can COP do for you? This is, an international conference. It's happening a long way away from many of us. So sometimes it seems like it's not really relevant to what we're doing, but there are things that I think you can do to capitalize on the COP. Firstly, in country, you can probably use that for your communications. You can tell people that this is what's happening and what the COP does and why it's a special event. In some cases, the delegations include people from the SEPA community. So some people will attend the COP physically. But if you can't attend the COP physically, we will be holding a virtual pre-meeting for SEPA, where we talk about the SEPA approach, where we talk about how people can get engaged, and where we develop some new tools. We're hoping to develop a SEPA manual that we want your input to as well. So we will let you know when that pre-event happens. You can also promote the Wetland Centre approach, so really start to publicise why wetland centres are important and what they can do. And you yourself can also look on the Ramsar website, if you don't know already, to find out who from your government will be attending the COP itself. So have a look at ramsar.org and under the country, under your country, if you're a signatory, you will be able to find people that are attending with their contact details if you wish to approach them. So finally, in summary, why is the COP important? Why is it something that's useful to us? Firstly, I think it is an opportunity to celebrate wetland centres. It's a date in the diary of something important that's happening globally, and we can use that to really tell people what we're doing at wetland centres. The new approach to SEPA, which Ramsar will be adopting, we hope, will be firmly based on specific targeted activities, and part of that will be the centre-based delivery of SEPA activities on the ground. If you are making links with people nationally about what's happening, you can then use those activities and networks to promote what Ramsar and what wetland centres are doing. And finally, attending the COP itself physically is quite a difficult thing to do, expensive and time consuming, but we hope that you will also take the opportunity to join us virtually when we hold the virtual meeting on planning for SEPA in Ramsar. So hopefully that was a quick rundown of what happens with Ramsar. If you want to find out more, then please do look at the Ramsar website on ramsar.org, or drop me a line and I would be happy to kind of explain anything that wasn't as clear as it could be. So I think that's the end of our presentations today. That's been about an hour, and thank you very much, everybody, for your attention and for joining. It is an opportunity now for people to ask questions. You don't have to by any means, but if anything has prompted your imagination or a question from any of the presentations that we've had today, then we're happy to either answer them or note them down and take them to people who may be able to answer in the future. It's been a really good kind of range of things, ranging from, the idea of planning and thinking about how you put a wetland centre in from the very beginning, to practical activities on the ground, the range of things, the responses to COVID, and how you use relatively small wetland centres to deliver good engagement and learning for people. I really liked also the way that people have used imaginative and ever-changing programs to keep people interested and to keep them coming back to centres. And that, I think, is testament to a lot of people like yourselves who are delivering this kind of work at a centre. So I don't know if we have any questions, but that's fine. No, absolutely no problem. We hope that you will join us again next time we run one of these webinars. If you have any feedback, then please do contact me. You've probably got my contact details. And we look forward to being in touch with you soon, either via the next webinar or through the WLI activities that we regularly attend. Thanks then to everybody, to Anna and Gordon for their chat, to Charlotte, to María, Ciller, to Abdelhak, and to Connor for all of your preparation work and making sure that the technical side of things went well today. So thank you, everybody. I think it just leaves us to say goodbye. And yes, very nice to be able to share some of the excellent work that our members are doing across the network. Hope you have a good day.
Bye-bye, everyone.